we should be live. Andres Fernandez, thank you for coming on the podcast. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
So,
Really honored.
yeah, thank you. So school has started.
Yeah.
We've just endured 3 days out of many, many more.
Yep, 185 more.
Oh. So it's 188 in total?
From Monte Vista, yes.
All right. How's it been so far? What's it like to get back in the swing of things, or at least try to?
It's been tiring, honestly. It's been hard to get back into like the system of going back to school and trying to get everything back and changing your circadian rhythm to suit back the rhythm of school. During summer I would go to bed at 12 or something and it's totally fine, but then just the other day, out of my own sheer exhaustion, I just went to bed willingly at 9:30.
Oh, you poor soul.
Yeah.
You on purpose were able to just naturally go to bed early.
Yeah.
My sympathy extends to you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, you didn't just lay awake in bed for hours? Oh, where do I send the donations?
Please send it to my crowdfunding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to send donations to our poor friend Andres, who can get to sleep on time at night, please do so.
That'd be greatly appreciated.
So senior year. It's
the big one.
It's the final one, the grand finale.
The grand finale.
Will.
Yeah, 7 years at being Monte Vista since 6th grade is coming to an end. To be honest, I'm a bit saddened by it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent more years at Monte Vista than anywhere else in my life, so it's been an interesting. I'm not necessarily ready to move on though. I genuinely like Monte Vista.
Yeah,
I genuinely do. So, it's a bit sad as the final curtain is being pulled to a close.
Yeah, but it has to happen eventually.
Yeah.
So. No time like the present to be contemplating the rest of your life.
Well, you could also think about the past.
But that's like unproductive to reminisce and just live mired in nostalgia when you've got stuff ahead of you that you actually have to take care of.
That is true. No, I do see the point where if you reminisce about the past, it could become dangerous.
Wait, really? Oh, this is a new development for you.
Well, I started thinking about this when we were reading Great Gatsby last year in Mr. Holtzclaff's class, and I was just thinking about one of the big themes or overarching themes of the book or the novel was that Gatsby he was just keeping on this idea about the past and he attained all these things just for an idea that he thought about in the past. So. Now, I'm not going on the point saying that I still hold firmly that history is very important to look to, but to reminisce and to think about a personal idea, I feel, I just feel like it'll be a hard thing to do. Because
there's a difference between studying history, which is generally stuff before you were born.
Yeah.
Long before you were born or have any sort of connection to in real life, that you're building that connection. Whereas if it's something that you've already lived and you've already experienced, then it's almost a little bit redundant to just keep on getting that good feeling of thinking how good things used to be, which they weren't. In all likelihood. Maybe for some people their life actually does suck more now than it ever has. But I think in general we just look at the past as if it were better than it actually was.
Well, I tend to do that a lot.
Well, no, I'm talking about your own personal past. Now, also people look at the historical past as if that was a better time than the one we're living in now.
Yeah,
which is just
it's like even like today we Donald Trump's logo, make America great.
I can't do Donald Trump.
Make America great again. It's implying that there was some better time in the past that America was truly great.
Yeah. So what if there was I don't know how the EU works exactly, but the leader of the EU wanted to make it a little bit more not more consolidated, but wanted to have more control. And he had a slogan that's like, make Europe great again. And by again, he means like back in the Middle Ages.
I see.
What would your thoughts be on that?
That there's a lot of good things to look there. As
Would you have an AMEA, MAEA hat on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
A person, if they want to look back to the Middle Ages, I think there's a lot to learn there. The thing that really frustrates me is just like, it's just poor scholarly work to just look at the Middle Ages and see all the problems that they faced and just say, this was, it's almost, a lot of people, you know, obviously things like the Little Ice Age and the Black Plague, those can't be helped really. But it's almost like most historians kind of like blame them for having to endure, like, you know, those things. It's almost like their fault. It's that bad of a time that's their fault that they're having this. Most obviously historians don't actually say that, but it's just like their tone or how they describe the time. It's almost like putting blame on the people back then. But the Middle Ages were this great time where yes, I acknowledge there was horrible disease, rampant death going on, but you know, people seem to overlook the happy joys of life. I mean, if we look at what's the movie Braveheart, you know, it's horribly historically inaccurate how they describe the Middle Ages. Like for instance, the houses, something that people always dwell on about the Middle Ages, just the houses, how people lived in these horrible little huts. But in reality, people had usually stone foundations, and then they had wooden planks laid down on the ground, or they would have more like condensed clay put on top of the dirt or the rough stone wherever their house may be located, and then lay rushes along the floor. And then your houses would usually be built out of clay or stone or straw, not like Three Little Pigs straw, but I mean like mixed with like clay and mud and plaster, and wood. And so then, and usually houses were, you know, pretty well equipped. They had their kitchens, their, you know, bedrooms. People had beds. Not everyone slept on the floor. That's another thing that people think about the Middle Ages. And they were clean. Generally, people, it was a huge religious idea to keep a clean house and a clean body because it reflected the body of Christ. So, I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't know. I don't know if you want that or not.
No. Whatever. This is a stream of consciousness podcast in a way, where we're just throwing out whatever comes to mind.
Yeah.
In a sense. So, but you obviously have a certain affection for that area of history, especially in and around the British Isles.
Yes.
And
I can't be called neutral, no.
Yeah, you can't be called neutral. But where did that? I'm curious as to your origin story for that. How did you become so entranced by the British monarchy of old and the feudalism and all that?
I see. Okay, well, let me just answer one thing. I don't like feudalism. I think feudalism it's a horrible thing to do. It's almost slavery.
So how do you distinguish monarchy from feudalism?
Well, monarchy exists out of feudalism because feudalism really works for the local lords. So local nobility, dukes and stuff like that. You would have people tied to the land who would serve the lord, and the lord would somehow vaguely connect to the king. But as a person that I love royal power and royalty, feudalism doesn't actually work for kings because it keeps most of the power with the nobility and away from the centralized authority of the crown in the capital. So most kings just rarely called on their nobles just for war, but most kings didn't even they had a lot of work to do to like administer their kingdom and make laws that actually people would follow. And many times even nobles would easily be as powerful or as rich as kings, and the only thing keeping kings on their throne, which is kind of like this being touched by divinity idea, in most countries, in most like medieval kingdoms prior to 1250, that's how they were kept. They were just kept in this idea of just, okay, they're just the king, but nobles would equally be as powerful. Like, for instance, there was a famine that happened in France, and the king of France could could not even decide to feed his people or like distribute grain. San Louis or King Louis the Ninth, he couldn't even feed his people because the control of the grain was in the nobility. So if he could have taken the grain theoretically, but it would have caused civil war.
So you're almost describing what it's something maybe more similar to what we have now, where there's a lot of symbology to being a monarch, but it doesn't necessarily have as much power, which you don't like.
I don't like.
You of course like all the cultural implications of being the king or queen or all that, but you want them to also actually have more power.
I do. I believe that they in their time they obviously. I mean, I'm not ignorant to the horrible things that some kings have done, but it's like the Middle Ages. I feel like a lot of people place this blame on monarchy, and honestly, I've grown up from a position where I used to think democracy was horrible. I think democracy is a good thing. I think democracy is a good system, and it works, and it has its problems. I just see my personal point of view. I just see that the solution to those problems that democracy has could possibly a monarchy. And actually, many political theorists have said that if you have a good king on the throne, there's no need for any other type of government.
Yeah, but keyword being if. Benevolent dictator is theoretically great if you find one that's benevolent enough.
Yeah.
But you don't really think that anyone... So let's just say you are... England overhauls its whole parliament system and all that BS, and then they're like, we want Andres Fernandez. This kid from America who's demonstrated keen interest in the throne. Now, of course, you're about to say, well, I'm not on the hereditary line, so I wouldn't accept the position. Let's pretend that a bunch of people die and you find out that you actually do have lineage that maybe you didn't know about before. And you're in line for the throne, but you have a lot of power. Do you think that you would be a benevolent dictator?
It's hard to say because a lot of people have described, like, test a true man's character and you give him power.
Yeah.
And really, people who are in power that are good tend to be people who don't desire power.
Mm-hmm. It's like I've always said there's a president paradox where the only people who you'd ever want to be president would never willingly run for president.
Exactly.
So we're screwed.
And that's why George Washington was an excellent president. He was almost coerced into running for president. He was forced into running for president.
He didn't even run for president.
Yeah, he was unanimously voted in by the premature electoral college at the time, and he accepted it as a service to his country. But he originally just wanted to retire back to his estate in Virginia.
Who wouldn't? You just fought a war and you pulled it off barely, and you're all happy about that. Now you just want to get some rest.
Yeah, exactly.
The people who are all power hungry after fighting the whole war, they're like, yes, now let me decide what we do with this country.
But to answer that question, obviously the answer is kind of tough to say, especially in a more public setting like this.
So if I turn the camera off, if I turn the feed off, you would be like, yeah, I'd be an awesome dictator, Frank.
I don't want to say dictator. Don't ever link dictators with kings.
So what's the difference? What's the fundamental difference?
Okay, so dictators, they usually seize their power by force. And now
it doesn't affect how they use their power, what their power is.
No, okay. And dictators, they tend to use totalitarian regimes. Monarchs, on the other hand, have authoritarian regimes where dictators means to control your personal lives and your public lives, if that makes sense. Like they tend to control what you're gonna work in, what you're gonna do, how you're gonna produce your income, but also create public laws that restrict certain things or do certain things. So you can have a good dictator, but those dictators tend to be people who keep you in a certain trend, and they keep you going in a certain way to work. Whilst in monarchy, they just legislate laws, and they just, like how we have a democracy, they just legislate laws, and historically they tended to let people do what they needed to do or whatever they wanted necessarily. Of course, when I talk about dictators, I'm thinking more the stigma of communist dictators.
Hold on a second. What was that, comrade?
But
In communism, there is no dictator. Only dictator is the perfection of the state,
working class.
Of the working class. Yes. We seize means of production and dictate together. You are your own dictator, comrade.
No, I disagree.
In communist regime, whatever.
But if you also look at Mussolini, Hitler, they also tended to control what people would go into, what they had to work in, or to do certain stuff. Monarchies historically have never been that intrusive into people's lives. They legislated about religious views, which is, one may argue, even more intrusive than legislating what you may do as to produce your own income. But since religion and monarchy usually go together, that was that. But monarchs have never said, okay, you have to go work on the mines, and you have to go do this, and you have to do that. They tended to let people do what they needed. So some people became merchants, some people became craftsmen, people would become bakers, some people would achieve different things.
Yes,
and
just like in communist utopia, some people want to be baker, they can become baker.
I see. Yes. But they learned that from monarchy.
No, comrade, monarchy is evil. It's hierarchies.
A hierarchy works. People tend to find themselves in hierarchies.
Yes, and in that hierarchy, we mean a bunch of people and then a couple of really, really cool people who are at the top of the hierarchy. That's the best type of hierarchy. It's 99.9% of the population and then 0.001% of the population on two planes.
Monarchy does work like that.
Yes.
And I would say, it's up front. Monarchy is not egalitarian. Monarchy is not democratic. Monarchy is not necessarily for the, it's now there's a clear distinction. Monarchy is not for the best interest of the people, but for the best interest of the country.
Okay.
And how I explain that is that
it's like that John F. Kennedy quote.
Yeah, what you can.
Yeah, ask not what what the country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Yeah, but monarchy tended to always.
Lee Harvey Oswald had a very succinct answer to that question.
Yeah. He did what he thought was best for his country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not sure if he considered it his country, but the country.
Yeah. But poor JFK.
Do you think Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone? What's your how deep are you into the whole JFK thing?
Okay, so for upfront, I hate conspiracy theories.
Okay, why is it? Well, you believe that monarchy works, so what keeps you back from?
That's not a conspiracy theory. That actually works. It has worked for the longest period in history. I mean,
that depends on your definition of work, but carry on.
I mean, it's functioned. One cultural historian, Dr. David Starkey, he's one of my favorite historians of all time.
I wonder why.
He has said that monarchy is the oldest and most natural form of government in the human race. If you think back to our tribal hunter-gatherer ancestors, they would elect a chief, but the chief would have absolute power within the tribe because in those times they needed quick, efficient decisions to happen. And those start to evolve, and we have our first established kingdoms in Mesopotamia and the Fertile Crescent, and obviously ancient Egypt.
So monarchy is the most natural and oldest form of government, just like blunt force trauma is the most natural and oldest form of birth control. It's the best.
I would not say that.
Okay.
I would not link it like that. But
because you don't like that. No. So back to. So why do you hate conspiracy theories?
Because okay, well, this is where it's just I really don't have necessarily a logical reason.
Uh-huh.
I just
the type of people who believe in conspiracy theories just make you go ugh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because it just seems like if it's been proven, why think about some weird. Now, what's funny is that my mom is actually she's very into conspiracy theories, and she's like, well, if you kind of think about it, it could actually happen this way, or and she's always like constantly theorizing different things, and I hate it because it just seems like it's almost ungrateful in a way that the information you're getting is not Correct. And so then, like for instance, the moon landings.
Yeah.
That just seems completely and utterly ridiculous that people would fake it.
Yeah.
And
well, the moon landings for me are difficult, are emotionally difficult for me to believe in a conspiracy theory about that, because I just think it's awesome that we went to the moon.
Yeah.
I don't want to live in a world where we never went to the moon, because that just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately my impetus for believing that we went to the moon. I am a moon landing believer.
Okay.
And
Same here.
my uncle's he wouldn't call himself a moon landing denier, but he's a little bit into the whole moon landing conspiracy business. And so I've wound up learning a lot. My one wheelhouse as far as history goes, and like something that I could actually just rattle off a bunch of info about, is the space race, because I had to prove to him that we went to the moon. And which I think that there are a number of very good reasons to believe that we went to the moon over not going to the moon.
Well, see, that's like for me, like I a lot of the conspiracy theories I hear, I just cannot believe that those things would happen. And I just feel like for instance, the JFK conspiracy about Lee Harvey Oswald. I think he did act alone, because of just how much evidence we have of him and the implications about him, and how it was. I mean, if it was greater than than Oswald, then we would have seen, I believe, more death. And the fact that he got JFK killed, is proof positive that it was just one guy. Because
I don't think that it doesn't seem as though you've particularly educated yourself in the nature of JFK conspiracy theories. Now, for the record, I'm not really either. I'm not I can't really say some definitive opinion, because there is a lot of weird stuff about the JFK assassination. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, my issue is that if some more powerful group were to assassinate the president, like the CIA or the mafia or something like that, killing him in broad daylight from long distance with sniper rifles while he's on a moving target is the absolute worst way to do it, because now John F. Kennedy, everybody knows that he was assassinated. And so conspiracy theories are of course going to pop up. If I would posit that if there was actually a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy or to assassinate him, the conspiracy theories wouldn't be who killed him. It would be that he was killed. Sort of like the Marilyn Monroe death conspiracy theories, where the cover story is that, I don't know that when she like overdosed or something, where wouldn't it be so much easier to poison him in his food or something like that, because we're not monarchs who have food testers.
Lines of food testers, over 8 people.
Is that your dream, just to hire private food testers?
Not really, because then I'd be pretty paranoid if I had to do that.
Well, no, you're not paranoid. No one wants to poison you. You just want you just want the image of someone tasting your food for you and being like, it's good.
That out of all the images of kingship, I that's not one of my favorite images. Okay. My favorite image of kingship would have to be like a king down the hall in the medieval hall on the throne, and he's surrounded by guards and he's just ordering stuff. And then
bossing people around.
Yeah, bossing people around, but also like.
So, but what's the origin of that?
Oh yeah.
Like
I'm sorry.
I'm just curious as to what life path as a Hispanic American you took to become so enthralled by 1,000-year-old British governmental systems.
Yeah. Well, I guess it all started with. It's gonna be odd, but I started with liking like DC comics and Batman specifically. I grew up on really. I had a whole collection of Batman comics and Batman movies, and I had over like 50 figurines of Batman in different costumes and different things. And I had anything you can imagine Batman. I had like 2 Bat caves, anything. But I don't know. I started to sidetrack.
Not full-size bat caves that you can drive into.
Yeah, not those. But I just started. I don't know. I got in love, or I fell in love with the idea of the Batcave, and I started to research more about it. And I started looking into fortified homes and fortresses, and eventually landed on medieval castles.
And at this point, you're what age?
I'm 4.
You're
5.
4. You're doing research. That's hardcore.
Yeah. And obviously, naturally, people who live in castles in the Middle Ages were kings, or the most famous ones for little kids. You know, kings, princesses, princes. Obviously, you see Disney movies and such, and it's ingrained in our culture. You know, people who it's not generally nobility who live in castles, but kings. And I just fell in love with the idea of monarchy, but I first liked the Spanish monarchy. So where my family is from.
Okay.
Of course, I have
getting a little like nativist.
Yeah, I have Spanish ancestry that are nobility. I don't have royal blood, sadly, as far as I know. I haven't done much further research than 1547, something like that. But as far as I know, I don't have necessarily royal blood, but I do have noble blood, and so I descend from dukes in Spain. And so anyway, so I fell in love with that idea, and I kept researching, and I liked the Spanish monarchy. But the Spanish monarchy is almost, every time I research it, even today, it almost seems like it's dying out. And it's not as, I want to say, traditionally flashy, if that makes sense. It's very simplified down. The king and queen of Spain currently don't live in the royal palace in Madrid, but they live in a way smaller palace in another part of the country. And for instance, when a new king comes to the throne, they're not crowned, but they're just almost sworn in like a president. And so it's lost a lot of its, grandeur in a way or stuff. So I started to look at other monarchies, and I found the English monarchy. Obviously, I am Hispanic American. I speak Spanish, but I don't know. As I was growing up, I learned English better, and I understood English better in a way. And it just became easier to research about kings in English because I found there's way more documentaries about history in English from the BBC, especially. And so, and I latched onto the idea of monarchy. Now, I remember when I was 7, I was watching this documentary about monarchy, and I got bored of it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got bored of it.
Never again, you said.
Yeah, never again. So I got bored of it, but I started to do more research, and I found it even more and more interesting. And ever since, I've really liked the British monarchy. And then obviously liking the British monarchy has grown my love for the country itself, the UK. And but I am, I think, like 15% British. Not very much, but I have like some little things, but it's not really because it's my heritage in a way, but it's just,
you just wound up liking it.
So
deep down, you just want to be Batman.
Yeah.
And, the closest next best thing is to be a king.
Yeah.
I see.
No, and I remember, that's an interesting thing, because we were watching a Marvel movie the other day, and with my friends, and we were thinking, and we were just talking about the superpowers, and I was just thinking, the best superpowers you can have in the real world, that's not like Batman, who doesn't have superpowers, but like those, like, superpowers like Superman, or Vision, but would be a medieval king. You have unlimited amount of money, or almost unlimited amount of money. You have, usually in an absolute monarchy, unlimited amounts of power, and your voice controls courses of nations. Yeah. And so that it's a cool, I guess, like, relation to that, where monarchy or kingly power is somewhat of a human superpower. Yeah. So just to answer that question, there's no like definite, I just want to, I don't know, I just like the idea of kings. I just gradually moved into it, and then as I learned more and more about it, I liked it. Hungry. Yeah. And that's another thing. To answer that other question, would I be a good dictator? Yeah. I want to believe so, and I believe that my morals will hold me strong in governing. But I am a power hungry person.
Yeah.
I am very power hungry.
Then again, you have to maybe just take the exact opposite mindset. Someone who's not power hungry just wouldn't get anything done.
Yeah.
Which you could make the argument that maybe that's good for a president of a more democratic or like Republican nation, but for a monarchy, you need a proactive leader.
Yeah, because without the monarch acting, the country comes to a standstill.
Yeah, so you've got to find that equilibrium.
Something like that I was just thinking about. It's like, I'm bouncing around. I'm sorry. But that dictator thing, another difference is that monarchs tend to be trained for life to govern a country, versus the current queen. She hasn't really ever taken any science classes or
That means you can throw a bunch of buzz. That means like Mrs. Tar could fly over to England and be like, well, if we take the density level of these atoms and these isotopes and blah, 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 and that's why you should invade Germany. And the queen would be like, oh, okay, sounds good, thank you, because she doesn't know science. So we can persuade her that way.
But like going back to that, so all her education has been, she knows French, Latin, English, a lot of languages. She was taught history. She was taught, obviously, English, and she was taught about the Constitution. She spent over 10 years just learning about the British Constitution and how is she limited in her powers, because she was being trained to govern. And I almost feel like that's a downside to the presidential system. It is great that anyone could run for president. I think that's an awesome thing of the United States and many other countries. But these people weren't trained to rule their whole lives. But kings were, generally. They were trained since birth how to rule a country, how to run an economy, how to make sure there are certain things happening in the country. So that's another difference between a dictatorship and a monarchy.
You know those people who are older than us? And back when we were in chemistry, we'd complain about chemistry. That I never took chemistry. I didn't need chemistry to graduate.
Yeah.
Weren't you just so green with envy?
I was.
When they said that.
I still am.
Ugh. Never took chemistry. That just sounds like a dream come true.
I liked chemistry.
When will I ever actually need chemistry? I
would say never.
Yep.
I would say never. I mean, that really depends.
You're trying to come up with, no.
I like defending institutions because I'm a traditionalist in that way. But I like but I really can't find a reason. I mean, obviously mathematics and English and I definitely believe that you'll need history. At some point in your life. I mean, in any class, math, you even talk. Sometimes there's lessons about the history of mathematics. For instance, when I started Mr. Tar's class this year, first thing on Wednesday was we watched a video, what is calculus? And 2/3 of the video was about, Sir Isaac Newton, he came out with it, and that's history. And so, history, you'll always need it. But chemistry, unless you're going into that chemical, I mean, it's good understanding of why things happen in the world. I mean, now you understand, why electrons and light flashes when you run a current through them, and you lose valence electrons, and
I haven't heard the word valence electrons in about 2 years. Don't remind me.
I still remember that lesson with pain, but yeah, generally speaking, chemistry is not really that necessary, I feel, for general life.
Yeah, it isn't, and they always say that it's good for your brain to do these to learn these complex things, and I have to figure it all out, and that's what they often say about math. Like, when am I ever gonna use calculus? Which, granted, I don't know calculus, but I'm just hypothetically, when would I ever use calculus? Well, you don't, but it's good for you to be able to process that information. It's like a workout for your brain. Yeah, that's what they say math is, but chemistry is like a worse workout for your brain. If I wanted to work out my brain, I would do different, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more strenuous, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It's just sort of in the uncanny valley.
Exactly. But yeah, chemistry, it just seems like, there's some subjects in school where it's just mandated by the government in a way to do it. And you have to just do it, I guess. It's like one of those things. I forgot the Latin phrase, but it's like, it's because of time immemorial. Mm-hmm. It just gives it legitimacy.
Yeah.
In a way. Another argument for monarchy is just, or not another argument necessarily, but another reason why it exists is just because of time immemorial.
Yeah. It's like it's sometimes fun or comforting, at least, to have institutions in a way that just keep on coming back. Sort of like Mrs. Tarr. Like, that's why did you take chemistry honors? Well, for one, I was in regular bio and I felt like a second class citizen my entire freshman year.
Why?
And because it's like I just felt like, well, if I want to portray myself as a relatively intelligent and competent at things person, why am I not in honors biology? I just felt, I guess it's just there were a number of inner psychological reasons why I just felt like left out, and well, dang it, I should have done honors. Well, I'm going to do honors chemistry this time. But it's also just the type of thing of where if you're at Monta Vista, Mrs. Tarr is kind of part of the package.
Yeah. And so, and I agree to that point where it seems like at school we have this kind of like hierarchy built into it.
Yeah. No, I got deep into that. I'm obsessed with that hierarchy.
Yeah. Those who are in the upper recesses of
the
honors
elite.
and AP. Yeah, the academic elite, the top 1%.
Mm-hmm. The top 1%.
But Mrs. Tarr seems to always follow you.
Yeah. I thought you meant literally for a second. I said, wait, what?
No. Mrs. Tarr, just I'm speaking about her like figuratively, just kind of like what I remember, like, even in freshman year, I would hear about Mrs. Tarr.
Like, she worked at Stanford at the particle accelerator.
Yeah, and then, but also like this like impending thing I would have to face my sophomore year, or the challenge to face, the next gate to face is Mrs. Tarr in Monta Vista Christian School. So, it's just, and she's still to this day. A lot of my friends are taking AP chemistry, and it's just, she's there. She's a fixture of Monta Vista life.
AP chemistry must be a little bit fun because it's like your second time around with Mrs. Tarr. There's got to be a little bit of a more relaxed atmosphere, even though it's a way harder class.
Yeah.
Where it's just small class size, only one period,
Yeah, because Mrs. Tarr, she scared me at the beginning. She was a bit intense.
She never scared. I went from just disliking her because I'm a little bit of an anti-traditionalist in a way, I guess. And so if you've got, Mrs. Tarr is such a great teacher, Mrs. Tarr. And what was really funny is on probably the first day, second day of sophomore year, a couple of different teachers asked me like, hey, Frank, so you're, what are you taking this year?
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah. Teachers that I had freshman year. And I said, I'm in X class. I'm in chemistry honors. They're like, that's with Mrs. Tarr. Yeah. How's that class going? And I'm like, it's going perfectly fine, is what I said. And then they both sort of got insecure about it. They're like, yeah, Mrs. Tarr is pretty perfect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they walked away. And she's not a monarch, for lack of a better term. Like I just really wanted the emperor to have no clothes, not literally. And so I disliked, and so I've slowly towards as the year went on, just sort of came around, and I didn't like the class because it was super boring. And I hate chemistry with a burning passion. Oh, wow, so okay. It's hard to get me to learn something that I hate. But Mrs. Tarr, she never scared me.
Yeah.
A lot of people were. It was like, it's so scary. It's Mrs. Tarr, because I I got in trouble with Mrs. Tarr a couple times for like,
yeah, I remember
you copying off the homework corrections in pencil and just passing it off as my real homework, or texting in class and stuff. Mm-hmm. And she yells at you, well, now what's going on right now? And everyone else is like, oh, cowering as if the king had just said, off with his head.
Yeah, exactly.
But she's just some person who happens to have a job that she's got a lot of job security. Great. What's there to be afraid of?
Yeah, exactly. Mrs. Tarr, she was, I mean, I always thought, like, at the beginning, I didn't like her that much because she seemed like this, like, change completely from, I had a Mr. Kwok from honors biology.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I was in regular bio.
Yeah, you were a plebeian.
Yep.
But us in the aristocratic circles had Mr. Kwok. And Mr. Kwok was this super laid back person who he would be found, after finishing a lecture, sitting and playing Clash of Clans in his desk, at his desk. So, I came from that environment to a more regimental environment as Mrs. Tarr's. And at the beginning, I didn't dislike her, but I had trouble trying to adapt to her way of teaching. But by the second semester, the start of the second semester, I really ended up liking her, and to this day I still respect her greatly. And
I'm not really a huge fan of hyper organization, but there is something to be said for all of the structure and the class and stuff. And I don't know, I have a couple of theories about Mrs. Tarr and the real motivations behind, how she would always go on and on and on after every test about how Tro is my gift to you. Yeah. I'm being so gracious and wonderful by bestowing upon you, Tro, test recovery option. Yeah. Where if you scored a 70 first semester, 60 second semester or lower on the test, you could go and you could try to recover. And so she's like, so if you're not there on Monday, well then too bad, because it is my gift for you during class when we do Tro. I don't think that it was a gift to us. I think it was actually a brilliant tactic on her part, right? I see. I don't know if you ever had to do Tro.
No,
I don't know if anyone ever actually had to do Tro, but for those who didn't, here's what it's like, right? You bomb the test. You're probably numb to it by this point because I'm using the pejorative you. Maybe I should say I. But anyway, you're sitting there, you walk into class, and she takes roll, and you pass up the homework and the red pens and everything. The red pens. And then she starts on her lecture for today. Lecture number 148, blah, 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 chemistry. And you're sitting there, you're pretending to take notes. And then she's like, now, before we continue the lecture, will all of the idiots who couldn't even get a 60 on the test please stand up in front of the entire class?
There's definitely humiliation
in that. They can all see you, and then walk all the way to the other side of the classroom to do Tro, to let them know how badly you bombed the test. And so you're sitting there thinking, well, my parents are going to be really mad at me if I didn't do Tro to get my score up. But man, is it worth it? And you have to sit there and you've got to judge, and you just think to yourself, you know what? Next time, I'm not going to have to do Tro. Yeah. I'm not going to have to get through this. And you just bite the bullet, and you get up and you walk all the way while everyone else is just looking at you.
I would even say it's not only a strategy for the lower scoring students, but also for the other students.
You're an example. It's like burning one heretic at the stake so that all the other heretics make sure not to be heretics.
Exactly. Anymore. I remember when I saw people standing up, I was like,
wouldn't want to be one of them.
Yeah. And it's like this dual. It's humiliating for, I would even say, for even the people sitting down who still sat down, because it's like this fear factor, like, shoot, what about the next test? I survived this test, but what about the next test?
Imagine if there was no Tro. Imagine if Mrs. Tarr just did this. Okay, everyone, think to yourself, did you get lower than a 60% on the test? Now stand up and let's all laugh at them because they're stupid. They're idiots. And everyone, like, some people pretend to laugh because they're nice. Other people actually laugh because they're all proud of themselves for getting an 83. Yay. And then he sat back down. That would be shut down in an instant. She wouldn't be allowed to do public humiliation like that. So she found a loophole. She hid it behind a Tro. So I genuinely think she's just blackmailing her students into getting better grades on the test.
No, and it also, like I said, like, the other students there would never tell anyone about this ritual that goes on Monday mornings, because they're scared if it happens to them. So she has like kind of this inbuilt system of like no leakage of whatever she does in that classroom.
So in a way, I kind of admire the ingenuity.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it still was humiliating.
Yeah. I mean, I before you were even gonna say the topic of humiliation, I thought you were gonna go somewhere else about, it's just like, you just like you felt lazy to just go up. But I was gonna say like it was humiliating in a way because you would see your fellow classmates, and you would know exactly who did bad.
During sophomore year, my grades weren't too good for a lot of the year, for the whole year actually. And one of my plans after first semester is I was gonna get a little like 1 foot by 1 foot whiteboard and tie a little string around it and wear it on my neck, and I would write in permanently my 7 classes schedule and then put my percent grade in front of each class, and I would never take it. I would take it off to shower and stuff, but then I'd have to walk around every day and be like, hi, I'm Frank. I have a 72 in Mrs. Tarr's class, a 58 in Mr. Hurst's class. And that would hopefully be a better motivator for me to
well, I mean, it would definitely, school is like an excellent system. Not an excellent system, but it's an excellent representation of a system in which there is of like the real world in a way. If you were to do that, what you were saying, you would be like breaking kind of like the system, or you would be in a way, because the whole point is that in a way school is like you have like this secret superiority to other people. In a way, like your grades are like
didn't seem very secret.
No, but like for Mrs. Tarr, but I mean like you would, people who had awesome grades, they would try not to show it off because it would seem prideful, but
they tried and failed.
Yeah, must be me included. But
Lucas didn't even try that.
Yeah, Lucas didn't even try.
I love her saying, "Didn't we have another year of school to go through?" But now we just don't care. Now it's just so.
Seriously,
year.
At the end of junior year last year, I had honors physics, and it had I had to like muster every single ounce of energy and will in my body to just do one problem of physics homework. I just couldn't handle it. I was tired. I didn't want to do it. Senioritis hit early last year for me.
It really felt like especially in, no offense, like Bible leadership, but in that whole sector, there was a cultural shift in general where as the years have gone on throughout high school, it doesn't seem like people are judgmental about academics as much as maybe they were. But then there was also, I remember last year, this huge push where everyone would just talk about all these people who I guess would be considered a part of, like we were talking about, the academic elite. Yeah. Would be all on this, grades don't matter. It's about who you are as a person and what God thinks of you and blah, blah, blah. Grades are stupid. Why would you care about that? It's about you as a person.
And then turn around and go back to class and
well, here's the thing.
You have to do good in school.
I started noticing some weird coincidences with these people. It's something.
These people being Bible leadership.
Some of them, yeah. That's what I associate it with. There was this one. You were one of the people when Bible leadership got to do their own chapel. Yeah. All their own little chapels in the A and B building during Spiritual Emphasis Week.
I was a leader of one. Yeah.
I remember that. I just remember a bunch of speeches given by students who were in there where that seemed to be like a main theme, and it may not have just been Bible leadership, but that's one thing that I associate with it. But it's just a trend of this certain class of person, we'll say, not to be classist. I don't mean it in that way. But you start to notice this weird coincidence where they used to really care about academic achievement, not only for themselves but in a way for other people, and that's how oftentimes, whether they liked it or not, how they would categorize people. And then there's this sort of sudden shift where they're suddenly really, really obsessed with the fact that grades don't matter, and you are beautiful and God loves you and all that nice sounding stuff. But then you also start to notice, when they're talking about it, they say, yeah, so I used to be really obsessed with grades, and then I started doing really bad in this one class, and then this other class, and I realized I was working hard, but I still couldn't get that A, and I got a couple of Bs, and then I realized that grades don't matter, and I came to this philosophical realization. Wait. Hold on just a second. Back up. So you were really intent on grades mattering, and then your grades got worse, and then you suddenly just happened to realize that it has nothing to do with who you are as a person or human value. What a weird coincidence that is. That the two things just happened to occur at the same time.
Yeah, and I feel almost in a way incorporated this because I think my speech or my little spiel was about something similar.
I don't remember what yours was about. Like in all honesty, it could have been you. Maybe I'm ranting about you.
No, it was I was talking about something. I know I was talking about something else. Yeah, but I mean, I would feel the same. And here's another historical little factoid. I mean, similar to like the aristocracy, when they had it, it mattered. But when they lost their almost power, when they started to decline after the French Revolution, for example, the nobility would always be like, oh, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But I mean, I personally, as a person who may be considered to be part of that academic elite, or not. Yeah, maybe. School elite, I guess. I've always been so fixated on grades and such, and I would definitely say that that having like you almost get this. What I'm trying to say is that I think the Bible leadership approach was that a lot of people got they got joy or earned or they felt good about themselves if they maintained it, and as soon as they lost it,
which I don't blame you for.
Yeah,
it's what the school and your parents and everything is telling you to do.
Yeah,
is like they give you a game, and if you play it successfully, you get a number out of it. That number is your grade point average.
Yeah.
So of course you feel good about working hard and achieving that.
Yeah, but I mean people. I remember in those classes, Mr. Talley came in, and we had to. He actually brought up that point, and it was a directive, I guess, from the top to incorporate those.
So so you say you don't believe in conspiracy theories, but you witness conspiracies happening all the time.
How is this a conspiracy?
It's a conspiracy because it was meant to look like it was organic when really it was an order. Nobody said.
Well, okay, guys, so Mr. Talley told us we have to tell you that grades don't matter because you guys are all stupid and you suck at getting good grades.
No.
So,
I would be careful to say it was the direct change came from Mr. Talley.
Okay.
But it
was encouraged.
It was encouraged by Mr. Talley and, by the people in Bible leadership. And I remember even having several devotions. We had to deliver devotions in Bible leadership. And
oh, man, that sounds fun.
I
love devotions.
So they are fun. I would say they are fun. But
maybe not in my case for the right reasons.
Yeah. But, oh, God, Miss Selk's devotionals, those are not fun. But several devotions were about the topic, about how one would define themselves by their grades, and they would find pleasure, joy, happiness in that achievement.
And then their self-definition is crumbled when they can no longer uphold it, and so they have to figure out some other reason to feel good about themselves. That's what it came across to me like. They were trying to cover for it. I say they very vaguely.
And I would even say that why you got the impression that was happening is specific to our class, because our class is highly competitive.
Yeah.
And highly, I would say, driven academically in a way. I think there's a larger percentage.
Yeah, we have a higher proportion.
Of students.
Did Mr. Holtzclaw tell you our class of all the AP Lang classes he's ever had the highest 5 rate?
Also for A-Push.
Really?
Miss Lunar also told me that we have our class specifically, class of 2020, we scored higher than the national average for over 10 years.
Yeah, well, no, but class of 2020, the national average 5 rate for AP Lang is like 9% or something like that. We were 22% fives.
Yeah, I forgot the exact number that Miss Linder told me, but she was telling me that for Monta Vista history, we certainly surpassed the record of 5s that has been earned in one class, and definitely on the national level, we also excelled exceptionally.
So point is, class of 2020 cares about grades. Move on.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that for that issue, or that thing that you were saying about the sense that people start to trend toward caring more about the personality, that grades don't matter kind of thing. I feel it's just the general trend of our class, since it was so highly focused on grades at the beginning, and we started to get a little bit more tired. At least I've gotten more tired in that way, to care as much.
I can see that
so fervently about grades.
But when you, the person telling us about, not you, but the pejorative you, talks about how there was this specific correlation with your own grades decreasing, it sounds to me more like you're trying to say that you just got fatigued from all the competition and you realized that this isn't the right way to live. And it seems more as though if you were still getting good grades, who's to say, or not, if you were still excelling to the extent that you were, who's to say that you wouldn't still have that same mindset?
Yeah.
Because now you think you're a more moral and better person than everyone else for not caring about grades. Now you look at the people who are still competitive, who are still in the upper echelons of the academic achievement, and you think, well, they're so selfish. They're just prideful, unlike me.
From personal experience, and myself, I would still consider being in those upper echelons, but it's more internally. I feel like I don't have that fixation anymore. Me personally, I still score decently, pretty good. The interesting for me though is that I was looking this past year, grade wise, and I was looking at my sophomore year, and I remember looking at specific like 97%, 96%, 95%.
You didn't care about the letter; you cared about the number.
I cared about the number, and so then I remember feeling that feeling, and in this past school year, junior year, towards the end, I was just like, I just want an A. I just want an A in this class, or to do well, but not like that fixation. I remember there was like sheer terror in myself when I would see it's a 91, it's an A minus, and I just remember that, and I remember this past like May, April, March, I was just starting to feel like, I didn't necessarily care as much. So I'm speaking from experience. Maybe a lot of our class feels like that in that way, maybe not. But from my personal experience, I've definitely gotten less fixated on the specific grade number, the percentage, and more just on the general grade.
Because you're just, it's almost as if you're getting sick of caring so much.
Yeah. It's almost like this over exaggeration of energy.
I always characterize it for me, and I'm not sure if this is totally correlated, but the worse my grades are, the more I care about it. In the sense that, and I'm not sure if I've told this story before or not. Hopefully I haven't, because I want to make this entertaining and not boring. But I probably in the past have cared way more about grade point average and grades and academics and stuff than probably most people would imagine.
Oh, really?
I can absolutely, I don't, and I think because I'm not, I don't give off the perception, or I don't give off the image that maybe you give off or have given off in the past of being in the academic elite. And having that fixation on grades, because I've always sort of made fun of the whole system, and I've always just been
I remember a conversation during summer school.
But because but the reason why I've trashed the whole system so much oftentimes is more because I'm disgruntled than because I'm just looking at it all from my high horse and being like, oh, this is futile and frivolous, ha 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 ha. Because I completely understand what it's like to tie your self-value to your grade point average. I purposefully made myself that way. I decided if I tell myself that I am my grades over and over again, then eventually I'll believe it. The only problem is that was ultimately a strategy for increasing my grades, which it didn't really work. And that was towards the end of freshman year. And sophomore year, my grades were worse, and maybe I was more stressed out about it, but a little less holistically, like I care about it. Like I didn't view it as important because I don't know why, but that's so. I guess my experience, what we're realizing is that there's a commonality between these experiences, and that there's a negative correlation between time spent in high school and caring about grades.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with that is that there's a positive correlation so far with time spent in high school, at least for the academic elite, and difficulty of classes.
Yeah.
So you just have to decide which is which.
Yeah. Personally, from my experience, I've taken on steadily heavier and heavier academic classes in a way. And that's definitely impacted, my grade point average. But I would mostly point to just sheer exhaustion from that over sense of caring. And me personally, as being part, I would say, I hate repeating the thing, but
I'm part of the academic elite.
Yeah.
I'm part of the academic elite.
But let's just say that academic elite for right now.
Let's come up with a sign language term for it so that you don't have to say it over and over again.
Yeah, but for me, for me personally, my grades had something where I was not like anything. I didn't have any special talents. Like I was not a particular. I'm not a particular awesome singer. I'm not a good actor. I'm not a good drawer. I do enjoy sports, but I'm not a D1 athlete. Let's just say that I don't care that much for. Sports are awesome and everything, but it just wasn't my passion.
Yeah, it's not something that you feel like you can excel in.
Yeah, excel in. And so the only thing left really was academics in a way, and that really fueled my passion for trying to be good in academics and trying to. I reasoned myself. I was like, well, if I can't do the arts, if I can't do sports, the only thing left is academics.
And what's interesting is that academics, your thing that you arrived at just happens to be the one that's most pushed by the man or the system, where the powers that be, the people with authority, even if they don't say it, ultimately because they're running an institution, what they want you to do most is the thing that you happened to decide, well, okay, this has to be my passion.
Yeah.
I've just always found that interesting because I can't, the idea of arriving at that as a passion, something that's so institutionally supported. And also what's always weirded me out about it, or not weirded me out, but fascinated me because I just can't relate, is the fact that it's determined by a number. Like if your thing is grade point average, you are 0.1 better than one person and 0.2 worse than another person.
Yeah.
There is a literal number that is an accurate summation of your ability to do it.
Yeah. Class rank.
Yeah, class rank, exactly. Whereas with most other talents or things that people pursue, it can be less subjective or a lot less subjective.
It's almost more lateral, I feel.
Yeah. Who's to say who's a better singer per se? Maybe some people, that guy's obviously off pitch and that guy's obviously on pitch, but eventually it's art. People judge it just based on their own feelings at some point.
Yeah, and then like in sports too, you may have like the best quarterback, but then you may also have the best basketball player, and you can't really compare them because they play completely different sports. But in academics, you have just a singular, almost vertical line of people.
It's a very hierarchical system.
Yeah, it's a hierarchical
which may be part of the reason why you gravitated towards it.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely not put it far beyond me to like it for that reason.
All the anarcho-communists watching, I know they're just trying not to barf.
No, and I like order and systems, and so always in shows they interest me when for instance there's this show I was watching called Madam Secretary. It's about the Secretary of State, who's a woman, but it's like it follows the Secretary of State. Anyway, so they needed to get something done, and the military, the DOD, was blocking it, the Department of Defense. And the chief of staff went over to like a 3-star general and like told him no, I need you to do this because I have the diplomatic rank of a 5-star general.
Yeah.
So and
you're like, it makes so much sense.
Exactly. I'm like, and you know, in those moments, I'm like, yes, you know, like if people, you know, when people
if
love
only everything was like this.
Yeah, it's just I love. You know, it's to other people seems ridiculous, but to me, I just love the order. You know, there's a pecking order. There's
but you're willing to be a cog in the machine. You're willing to be at the bottom of the pecking order because you respect the fact that there is a pecking order.
I'm willing. I mean, many people have asked me, "Are you willing to live in a monarchy?" I'm like, "Yes." Even if I wasn't the monarch or a noble, I'm willing to live in one.
Because you like the. I'd say see how that works experimentally before you absolutely proclaim it. That's just my advice.
Yeah, but you know, I don't. Obviously, I have ambitions of power, and I want to rise in
It's
the.
a great quote. Obviously, I have ambitions of power.
but you know, I want to rise in the pecking order, but I don't necessarily see an issue. I actually see a horrible thing if everyone is equal on the same plane. I feel like everything just falls to pieces. There's no order. There's no law in a way.
It's like there's no contrast. It's like you're looking at a picture that's just gray.
Yeah, exactly. And almost it's like, and a lot of times what's interesting like about this pecking order, in some movies you always see, so there's like let's just take this, you know, it's monarchy, but you know, we have the king, let's just say he's a good king.
Yeah.
And then you have the minister right under him who's highly corrupt. You know, just using the king's name to get money, power, influence, all that. And I love in movies, I don't know if you've seen the Robin Hood movie.
The Disney one?
No, not the Disney one.
The Disney one's it's an underrated Disney movie.
It is a good movie, but I forgot the one. I think it's
1938
2007. No, 2007.
Okay.
I think it's that one. But there's this moment when obviously there's a pecking order, and if the top is good, it works. And
That's dependent on the top being good.
No, I know it's dependent on the top, but it's just I love the feeling of like I talked about that Madam Secretary example, and now I'm talking about this Robin Hood example where Prince John, you know, obviously we know the story of Robin Hood where, you know, he was a horrible leader in a way. But when King Richard returned, you know, there was great celebration because now there's someone above that corrupt figure who's taking control and, you know, and lays out justice in a way. And so the idea of just like having a corrupt figure like and does all these corrupt things to gain power, influence, money, but then and in many shows that I love, it's just when the king summons that corrupt figure into like the throne room and appears before them, and they have to like humble themselves before the greater power. It's something, and then that greater power has the complete will to do whatever they want, to fire, get rid of, strip them of their titles, wealth, and all of that. It's just like this, like, you know, that's just. If we're all on the same plane, there's no accountability. There's no, you know, in a way, accountability. And to me, as a Christian, I just see that as, you know, me appearing before the throne is something that just like keeps me in check. And so that's why, you know, not only monarchical standards are in my fantasy historical ideas, but in my real life, you know, I just kind of think about the day when God is going to call me before the throne, and I have to, you know, show what I've done in my life.
So, but you get more catharsis out of seeing a higher power defeat corruption as opposed to seeing a lower power defeat corruption.
That is true.
Because I think, at least for me, and probably for most people who have been raised in a society that at least claims to promote freedom, at the very least, we more like Robin Hood and all the peasants and all the poor people who are getting taxed to dryness. Yeah. We get catharsis out of seeing them go in and steal from Prince John and ultimately being the victors. And there's still a hierarchy there, but I think that what we get out of it is the ascension of the hierarchy rather than you like the fact that there's a static hierarchy.
Yeah. And I was going to say something, but like so in Robin Hood, you have the king figure, the one who's higher, or who's the highest one, who can like look down on everyone else and dictate certain things. I was gonna say something, but I don't remember about that point. But certainly I feel. What I was gonna say actually now I remember is that a lot of times in movies, I was talking to Josiah the other day because we were watching The Dark Knight Rises, and my favorite movie from that trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, is The Dark Knight, the middle one, the second movie, and
that's the common opinion of aggregate people and critics and stuff.
Not only for how it's made, but mainly because of the story. I like when people are at their peak. When Batman, in that point, he's not crushed. He's working with the police. He has Mr. Fox working there, and he has his billions intact, and everything is at its peak.
And in a more meta way, you like it when the trilogy is at its peak. That's when Christopher Nolan was at his peak making Batman movies.
Yeah, exactly.
The middle one was the best one, and they were on top of their game.
Yeah, and Josiah was even saying that he liked The Dark Knight Rises because it's almost that like rebirth in a way of Batman, because he lost everything. He lost a great love. He lost his billions. He lost Bane even broke into the armory. I mean, he lost everything. And in movies, I tend to hate that in a way. I want to be careful what I'm about to say.
Okay.
I don't want to be linked to horrible people or to horrible leaders in history, but in my head, subconsciously, I like when I don't like, but I don't know, somehow
there's some sort of positive
there's some sort of positive emotion in my head that happens when a power, whether that be good or evil. Now obviously I have my favorite, which is good. They're at their peak, and sometimes I even get sad when those powers
when the Berlin Wall comes down and...
No, I mean, that's why I said I want to be careful, but I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's probably just my over fascination with just the hierarchy. And
but you almost look at Nazi Germany like, man, did they have a heyday?
It's almost like I remember even I was watching like the growth of Hitler's Germany throughout Europe, and and it goes, and there's a map, and it expands as Hitler conquered more and more of Germany.
And you see the map expanding. That's automatically just like, oh, dopamine.
Yeah,
that's happy.
Yeah, and so, but then obviously when we get to like 1944, 1945, it starts constricting because the two fronts start to open in the Western Front and the Eastern Front. And hear me clearly, I do not support Nazi Germany. I hate Hitler.
Everyone, Andres is a neo-Nazi confirmed.
And I find it detestable what he did.
Yes.
And it's a horrible person. But I don't know. But if you take out Hitler from the thing and you look at just the map expanding and constricting, and let's just get out of Hitler right now. But let's talk about my favorite empire, the British Empire.
Yeah.
By 1957, 1960, most of the colonies were starting to declare independence, and for me it becomes sad. I almost empathize with the British, or empathize. I always empathize with the British, but I almost empathize with any power that seems to be losing, like, their golden age, their point. Even like Roman Empire, when they collapsed in 457 AD, it was kind of like this sadness almost, like, wow, they're gone.
It's the end of an era.
It's the end of an era, exactly.
It shakes everything up. Well, now what?
Yeah. So again, I don't like evil empires in history, but I don't know, there's something in me that it's like, or even in Star Wars. I remember in Star Wars
when the Death Star blows up.
Yeah.
Well, I would think you just like the Empire. I think you just full stop.
And for instance, like, I really don't like the rebels in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I prefer the Jedi
they're just
Order.
A terrorist organization.
Yeah,
they're basically ISIS.
Going against an established order. And for me,
know what? They needed to blow up a couple planets. It's for the greater good.
I mean, in Star Wars, my actual favorite people are the Jedi. I love and especially, and I know, and I'll get hate for this, but
prequels. You like the prequels?
I don't like the prequels. How they were made,
but you like
if
the Order
story,
of the Jedi Temple.
Yeah, the Order of the Jedi Temple with like the Grand Master and the Council of Masters, and you have the Jedi Knights and the Jedi,
the Padawans,
and the younglings, and then you have like the temple
there's
spread out.
There's a ladder to climb.
Yeah, and then sitting at the top is a wise, like super powerful Jedi. You know, Yoda sits at the top of it, ordaining what is good. You know, and so. I like that. And again, like in Star Wars, when the Empire was there, it's almost, it was, you know, and they kind of show like a broken Star Destroyer just like sitting there, or the, you know, the floating pieces of the Death Star, and it's almost, wow, you know, there goes the established order. I'm a person that hates chaos. I'm a person that hates disorder. I prefer having a sort of order. And in history, looking back at it, it's most people would agree with that in a way, because like the French Revolution, the Reign of Terror came after the execution of Louis the 16th, sorry, and Queen Marie Antoinette. And people in France went back and forth between a republic and a monarchy several times until really the 1870s, which is not even that long ago. To really think about the history of France. You know, we may say the French Revolution was actually in 1789, which is farther from where we are today. But you know, when they actually became a full republic up until this day, you know, it was only 1870s, 1880s. So, you know, and people, what I'm trying to get at this point is people will always choose order and calm and security and stability over ideological ideas. So like, for instance,
because it's comfortable.
Yeah, it's comfortable. It's more comfortable than having to fight for democracy while starving.
Yeah.
So I just like order in that way.
It's crazy that at the end of Return of the Jedi, Darth Vader saves his son.
Yeah.
Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, he kills one bad guy, saves one good guy.
Yeah.
And then we take off his mask, and he's just this old dude. He gets his last exchange with his son, and then he dies, and we're all sympathetic for Darth Vader. But Darth Vader, if you want to play a numbers game, was way worse than Hitler.
Yeah.
He killed, or was it, I guess it was who... Because they destroyed multiple planets, very populous planets.
Yeah, that probably had billions and billions
of people, way more than 6 million. That's peanuts, you know. Or I guess maybe it was Grand Moff Tarkin or the Emperor or whoever. Yeah. But you don't really get put into perspective when a movie is of that scale, just how evil.
Yeah, someone is.
Mm-hmm. I guess percentage of the population, since we're dealing with an entire galaxy full of populous planets, maybe one planet is equivalent to maybe 1 million people here on Earth.
Yeah, exactly. But Darth Vader was an evil person, but like you said, in that emotional moment at the you know, in the sixth movie, the third one produced, it's emotional to see, and you know, and I like seeing like the good guy triumph in the end. Yeah, I always like that. And like, for instance, I hate when it's really interesting when bad guys triumph in the end. Like, for instance, what was it? Infinity War. You know, when Thanos like just kind of like came victorious in the end of the movie, and we're left hanging in that way. It's almost. I like I said, I like the established order, and the fact that, you know, he overturned the established order. I completely hate. And then and going back to Star Wars, you know, when Darth Vader threw Emperor Palpatine down that in Star Wars, those seemingly endless
down the chasm of whatever sort of energy that was.
They always have in Star Wars, though.
Yeah.
When he throws him down, it's kind of like the end of the Empire, and it's the end of an established order. And really, if you think back chronologically, it's spanning this time going back to in the age of the Republic in Star Wars, and so it's just kind of like last link destroyed between that, and I'm a person that likes symbolic value a lot too. So, explaining that last link is also why when the Queen dies, the current Queen of Great Britain, and Northern Ireland, when she dies, it's one of the last people with a link to World War II, and I mean she's the only leader, because now the Emperor of Japan has abdicated, but she's the only leader that's still in place today, that has survived, and it's still in power, and is from that time, from World War II. So it's almost
she wasn't queen during World War II.
No, she wasn't, but she lived.
She was around. She lived through it.
I mean, she served in World War II. She was in the Women's Auxiliary Territorial Service, and she actually
Watts.
What?
WATS. Watts.
Yeah, she was. And it's interesting. She actually broke down a motor and had to recompose it together in front of the king and queen, her parents, and she knew how cars worked, and she worked in that thing. So I mean, she definitely gave her part during World War II. But like I'm saying, when she dies, it's kind of this last link between the past and today, and it will be sad.
Yeah, like when the last person who was born in the 1800s dies. That's gonna be pretty soon.
Yeah,
probably.
I think there's only a few people, a few, just like I think a handful of people left around the world who are born in the 1800s are still alive, and it's just so interesting, those links to the past.
That's what I sort of I've realized about, because my parents are middle aged. They're not that old, but when they were kids, the old people when they were kids were compared to me super old. Yeah, like when my parents were 10 years old, someone born in the 1800s is no big deal. They're just in their 90s. Tons of people are in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just this continuation of just like people dying, and you see people like the last links between certain ages. I remember in A-Push we were talking about, like in the 1940s, there was like still like some veterans from the Civil War, the American Civil War, and it's just so interesting to think about. Wow, like you could have met.
Have you seen in 1955, 57, mid 50s? There was this show called, I forget what the show was called. No, the show was called I've Got a Secret, and it's this like game show type of thing with a host, and they all talk in the transatlantic accent, and the speakers were really bad, so it sounded like this. Yeah, and it's like, I've got a secret. Our next guest is someone, and there's something very interesting about him. Yeah. And then they have a panel of people to basically just ask 20 questions with them to figure out what cool thing this guest had. Anyway, this guest was this super duper old guy, and he saw Abraham Lincoln get assassinated.
Oh wow.
Back in 1865. He was 96. He was 90, it must have been 95, because he was 5 years old. And he remembers seeing John Wilkes Booth like swing like Spider-Man down from the theater box onto the stage. And he didn't know that the president had been assassinated, but he has that memory, is one of his earliest memories. Wow. And so by age 95 in the 50s, he could barely talk, and he sort of sounds like this. And he died shortly after that, but it's pretty crazy that was a syndicated television broadcast that you can look up on YouTube. Yeah. His name was Samuel Seymour or something like that. Had a Seymour or Samuel in it.
No, I truly love that. I think it's awesome that people, keep those remnants, or they remember that stuff. And it's so cool to talk to people who are from different time periods. Even like, I think it's almost, I was thinking recently, it's almost sad that it's already been 100 years since the First World War. Yeah. We just, last year we passed the centenary for the ending of the war. And it's just kind of like interesting to talk about the people only 100 years ago, what they did and what they experienced, and almost, and I think, I don't want to say it's just like there's nothing interesting happening today, but it almost seems like those people have like way more interesting stories.
Well, I mean, a world war.
Yeah,
the Great War, as it was called back then, as everyone likes to say, because they didn't know there would be a second one. Yeah. It's a pretty crazy event, but we don't have the perspective now to realize it. But when we're getting up there in years, we're gonna have a lot of crazy stuff to tell people about. Because I often, Now we may be a little bit late. Maybe our parents' generation might honestly be the best ones to witness it. But the information boom that we are a part of, like you and I, what's crazy is that there's a generation gap between me and my youngest sister, Clara. Yeah. I was born in 2002. Claire was born in 2007. And like she saw when a couple of years ago, she saw like a VCR, a videotape, VHS tape for the first time. She had no idea what it was. And I remember, and of course it was at the tail end of the technology. DVDs were everywhere, but I remember VHS tape. I remember DVDs and CDs before everything was just accessible digitally. Yeah. And
I remember we had to go to Blockbuster, and my parents would go to Blockbuster and get the movies that we would watch, and they were like in VHS cassettes.
For sure. And we're old, so my sister doesn't really have any recollection of a time before smartphones. Whereas me, we had my family had a computer, and I would go on the computer to watch YouTube or to go and play Flash games. Yeah. But I remember seeing a smartphone for the first time and being like, whoa, asking my dad, is it touch screen? Yeah. He's like, yeah. And I was like, no way. And you can touch the screen and you can access the internet on this tiny little thing. Yeah. I remember the only way to access the internet was a laptop or a big box.
Yeah. And I even remember when I was in 3rd grade, my family got the first iPad. But we got it soon as it came out. Apple released it. And I remember it was so strange. Like today we think about everyone has iPads. Yeah. Or tablets or, stuff like that. But I remember the iPad back then was, I think we still have it. It doesn't work anymore, but it's almost like kind of like the Mac shape. It kind of has like a bubbly back, and then it's, it's kind of like that. But it was so interesting. I remember when we got it, it seemed like so advanced and so cool. And I still remember when iPads didn't exist. And I remember when I was even coming to Monte Vista, Monte Vista would say they were one of the first schools to get iPads integrated. Yep. And so that was something cool that I guess we could tell when we're older.
For sure, because we both have absolutely clear memories of a time when if you were out and about, you couldn't really access the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you can. Now not pretty much everyone on the worldwide basis, but in our world, everyone has that in their pocket and they can go search something up if there's cell reception or if there's Wi-Fi. Yeah. I mean, I thought of internet as an Ethernet cable back in the day. Now we're just back in my day, we didn't have your fancy schmancy iPhones and iPads. But seriously, you can't take for granted the fact that we got to witness a part of a major technological boom and growth that has never been seen before. Yeah, exactly. As far as our ability to actually have information. That's what's funny about looking back on what people thought the future would be like from back in the day, because they would have flying cars and a robot that can take the pie that's baking out of the oven at the exact time for you and here you are, Mrs. Watson, this is your pie, it is perfectly cooked. Yeah. But they never really thought of the big picture of what I think that what we have today is way more mind-blowing than colonizing Mars or having a C-3PO humanoid robot around. Yeah. Because of just how connected we are and just how we can store things digitally and process information like that.
Yeah. And it's just unbelievable to think about the type of, like you say, it's this world has become really globalized and connected because of the technology we have. And I guess what I think is interesting is that and there's a movie created in the 1960s about 2001.
Yeah, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, Space Odyssey. And so, they were talking about all the things that. What's interesting is that historically, when people dreamed about the future, a lot of the gadgets and things were more for personal use. Yeah. But today, what's turned out to be is more the gadgets and technology that we have gotten are more for social uses, I guess. If that makes sense.
It's a lot more practical than it's not just a convenience.
Yeah, it's not a convenience. It's more of a communication device or something to be connected around the world. Globalization on a much larger scale. So, and expanding globalization, now that we can, you can have teleconference meetings between Hong Kong and New York, which is, it's undreamable to some people.
And you can give them a file,
Yeah,
and you can transfer that, and it might take a couple hours if it's big. But think about that, people. Even back in the 1950s, what is a file? Well, that's the thing that I have in my cabinet. It's a piece of paper. But no, this is way more information than you can fit on a document. This is an interactive program and an interface and all that.
Yeah, so it's just really interesting how we're living in this time of history, this point in history.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and I sometimes always think like, oh, how's it going to be in 30, 40, 50 years when I'm older? Just thinking about the things that will change in between us, or right now the early 2000s, I guess, and then eventually in the 2050s, 2030s, 2040s. And it's so interesting to think about what the kind of technology we'll get there. But even though we have awesome technology right now, I feel like we're also losing something. We're losing a sense of morals away, a sense of values.
We're more moral than we've ever been. That's one of the things that I think I've had to slowly realize over the years, is that debauchery and a lack of morals and all of that have only, if you just go back and turn the clock back in history, it just only goes further and further up.
Yeah. Well,
I think that
I feel like
I think
sense
that
of human decency and almost respect for. Now, some people might say this is just propaganda spread, or just institutionalized. Like we were talking about grades before, that the man is drumming into us that we need to achieve good grades, and the system, the institution, whatever you want to call it, is drumming into us that we need to achieve these good things and to do these things. But I almost feel like people today are more individualistic. So I just spent talking about how our gadgets today are more they're more globalizing. We spend more time communicating with people,
and I think that makes us more empathetic because we have a larger perspective on what people are thinking. Not even that, like, oh, we know that there are starving kids in Africa and we've got tons and tons of pictures of it and more accounts than people back in the day would, but we can just see how some other random person who, for all we know, might live on the same street as us, we can just read what they're thinking.
Yeah.
We just have so many more perspectives on people's way of life and how they operate. And we realize that we really are more similar than maybe we would have thought. And I think, obviously you can continue on with your point, but I think that that's made us more accepting of other people.
Yeah. I'm saying that. You have a point there, but I was just not mainly talking about, but I just feel like, in addition, our society and our government, in a way, it's hitting this point where we have less and less people, especially in our government, who are willing to compromise, in a way, for the sake of their political party. Now, I'm not pointing directly to Democrats or Republicans, but I'm saying people are becoming, I feel, this is my opinion, more self-interested, more individualistic. What can I gain? What can I do? Now, of course, I'm not saying that in the past people weren't like that people were.
And would you not say that history is skewed towards looking at groups of people and looking at institutions as opposed to looking at the motivations of the individual?
That is true.
So we talk about the motivations of a country when we're discussing a war that happened hundreds of years ago, as opposed to the motivations of
the individual.
Yeah,
I agree, but I almost feel that that everything today is kind of like skewing in a way where people are more interested in achieving in their way their end. And I say it's today because of the advent of the technology that we have, where in the past people didn't have that technology, so they had to be forced to be more they had to work more in a community, and they had to, I don't know, to me it seems more that we have to force young people to invest in their community than before in history, because people were constantly having to invest in the community before. And
I think that the community's just gotten larger, which is thus it's harder to invest in. It's harder to convince yourself to invest in. But I see what you're saying, that now that the world is so connected, your town doesn't seem like as much of a binding force as it used to be.
And but mainly the thing, like I was just thinking about it, was just that in American politics and in our current federal government, I just feel that a monarchy. I love throwing that word around, but in
academic elite.
Yeah, academic elite. But in our current not academic system, our current governmental system, especially in Congress, and I've just been seeing now, I don't believe there's no exceptions to the rule where bipartisanship happens, but I don't know. It's just I've been looking at it, and even when we started APUSH this year, we saw like these great compromise bills that happened throughout American history, and it seems like one party passes a bill and the other wants to repeal it just because the other party passed it, instead of trying to fix it or amending it in a way. A lot of people, or a lot of the politicians today, if they propose something, they don't want to pass it just because it's from the other party.
It's just us versus them.
It's this us versus them, and it's this polarization that is not due to the current administration, and it's not due to the past few administrations in a way, but I think it's been happening in American culture at the advent of technology and at the advent of just people trying to obtain these ideals that they have wanted, more, I guess, personalized ideals. And I just feel that, and I was talking to Josh about this the other day, and we were talking about what this country needs is more of a unifying factor, another reason why we need a monarchy. Now, I'm saying America does not need a monarchy because historically it just wouldn't work for America. But
that would be tearing down the institution.
Yeah.
It'd be just like when Nazi Germany fell. You'd be so sad.
Yeah, it would. I would see the end of the United States as a sad thing, because it's the established order. But I mean, figuratively, argumentatively, the continuation of an established order or monarchy would probably serve. But anyways, back to the point. Today we were kind of like becoming more polarized, and I feel, and especially in our politics, and it's discouraging to see. You see, like today, Democratic candidates, they're like, for the 2020 election, they are just saying, you need to vote for the right person who's going to beat Donald Trump in November.
Yeah.
And not saying, I mean, obviously they touch on other topics, but that's how they start out, and they always, that's how they finish their debate or their speech, or, and so then they're talking about just who can beat Donald Trump, and I just feel like that's not what's good, and it's not, and I just feel it's this polarizing thing where, okay, so the Democrats win the election, now the Republicans are going to try extra hard to win the next election. It's just going to be this switch, vice versa, back and forth, where we don't really achieve anything. And what we need is, I don't have the answer, but what we need is something unifying in the country. And something I always like to think about is that the motto of the United States, it's not, even though the official motto is "In God We Trust," that's a whole other conversation, but the de facto motto of the government of the United States is "E pluribus unum."
It's as plural of many, we are one.
Yeah, as from many
Greek and Latin root words, everybody.
I love those. Many we form. From many we form one. And so the whole point of the United States is not the motto of the United States is not equal justice under the law, freedom for all. It's not the Star-Spangled Banner. It's not the home of the brave. It's nothing like that. It's nothing democracy for all or for the republic, pro republica. That's the Roman phrase that they use a lot. But it's none of those phrases. What's surprising to me about the United States is that their de facto governmental motto is "E pluribus unum," from many one. And this idea of unification I feel is what's hurting the United States right now.
Well, do you think that the genesis of E Pluribus Unum might have been that there were 13 different colonies and that they were all coming together as one, and that was what they had to do? And it may not necessarily mean a long-term society thing, but this is just a symbol of the unification of 13 colonies that, because they were all a part of the British Empire, for their intents and purposes, they were just different countries.
Yeah, but I would still say, I mean, it still implies today. I mean, from the 13 colonies and the addition of the further states of America up until we have the 50 states currently, I mean, it's still creating this from many one. We acquired Mexican territory, which is historically very different than the Eastern Seaboard. And how they fought. I mean, the American Revolution really happened in the Eastern Seaboard against the British. And the interesting thing about the United States is why that message still rings in California when it rings in the East Coast, because California, which is pretty much acquired by war, by the 1850 Compromise, and by just like law, so. It's just so interesting that this revolutionary spirit from the 13 original colonies comes from the East Coast and still rings true in the East Coast and still rings true in the West Coast.
So how many years do you think until America collapses? You're saying 100, 150, 50?
Right now, economically, we're soon going to be beat out by China.
Okay.
China. We're soon going to be beat out by China. We don't have the largest manpower military, really. China and India both surpass us military power. China every day is becoming more and more influential as a country. I would say the decline of the United States, like the decline of the British Empire, and the decline of the Russian or the Soviet Union, is inevitable. I would say I would give the United States maybe 100 years more.
All right.
Of more superpower dominance before it starts waning.
But so 100 years of the global superpower that we know today.
Yeah.
How many years until it does not exist? How many years until it's the USSR? It just doesn't exist anymore.
It just doesn't exist. At this moment, I don't think so, because I mean, the USSR is one example of one country falling apart. But for instance, if we look at France or many European countries, they've been existing for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So in different shapes of government. Now, if you mean the collapse of a elected democratic republic,
or just of the government, the Constitution is over. It's still called the United States of America.
Yeah.
But there's no more Constitution. There's no more three
branches of government. Yeah. I mean, I could see that happening within.
Inside you're thinking, well, my plan is 2053 is my deadline in here, but I'm not going to let anyone know.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I was like talking about it with, just as a joke with some people. If they wanted to run for president, I would love to be in a way, create a plan where I'm like the designated survivor. I've been watching that show and on Netflix, and it's just a really interesting show that the American government still continues on even through the worst doomsday scenario. So as a joke, I've been saying, like, if someone in our class becomes elected to president, I would love to have a cabinet position, and then on a certain State of the Union address be designated survivor. And that's how I achieve the fall of democracy and the rise of monarchy in the United States.
I see.
But
a shrewd plan indeed.
Yeah, shrewd plan indeed. But it's interesting. And talking on that point, I just wanted to say that I've changed how I've been, where I used to say monarchy is the only way to go and democracy in America is horrible. I love America. I truly do. I think, and lately I don't want to be a historian anymore. I don't want to be a pure historian anymore. My plans for right now is to, work for the U.S. government.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
little bit of 180.
Yeah, a little bit of a 180.
Which isn't that a paradoxical phrase? How can you have a little bit of a opposite direction turn? A little bit of a 180 would be like a 90 or a 45.
Exactly. A mini 180 would be.
That's just a turn that doesn't take you as much distance.
Yeah, a 90 degree.
Well, no, that's a different amount of degrees.
Yeah.
Which why wouldn't you just say 9? I don't know.
It's okay. It's Friday after the first week. But yeah, lately I've been thinking I want to better serve this country and hopefully serve this country in the diplomatic service or something like that.
So you're just chilling in the UK embassy or something.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty sweet gig.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I truly do love this country, and I actually see I used to be so stubborn, but I see the beauty in, like, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by a creator with certain unalienable rights, those being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I see beauty in that. I still aspire to the monarchical glory and majesty that comes with it, but
in America, you can be your own monarch. You can be a majesty just by yourself, just based on the nature of who you are, because we are so rugged and individualistic, and I guess. Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't. I mean, that's the whole American dream in a way.
And even if the statistics say, hey, upward mobility is higher in X country and X country and X country.
Yeah.
My understanding, now I could be wrong, is that in America, we still probably do have the most culture of screw everybody else. You do what you want.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, it's a capitalist country in which free determination of your own life is mainly determined by, you know, the individual, and saying who, you know, what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and you know, to achieve your own goals, and to do whatever is necessary to achieve those own goals, sometimes even brutally. I just feel like it's the American way, and I mean, it points to how America was founded too.
Yeah.
I mean,
we just got sick of being bossed around, and we wanted to be our own boss. And in a way, that's what a monarch is.
Yeah, I guess.
So,
I guess the United States became a mega monarch of its own.
A multi-monarchy where everyone is king.
Yeah, where titles of royalty are no longer limited to the few and the privileged, but to the many.
Yeah. And with that, we just did an hour 47. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and yeah, that'll about wrap it up.
Okay. Well, it was a great time. I loved talking about everything I had to talk about. I hope I didn't bore anyone with all that history knowledge.
Oh, there's no you can't bore people. I mean, come on. When you're just like a just machine gun, just spitting out fact on fact on fact, people are so caught off guard that they can't even be bored. If you were a teacher, you might bore them.
Yeah.
But you're just some random guy on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
So that gives it a different connotation.
Yeah. But thank you. It was a true honor.
Absolutely. And anyway, audience, hello. We hope you enjoyed that. Be sure to tune in every Friday at some time of the day during Friday, in which it will be me and some other awesome guest like the one you see right on your screen. So yeah,